Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3812 AM. Today's date is January 6th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Trump is using the Jacksonian Pivot to remove the central bank system. Pieces are coming together. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see their narrative of trying to convince everyone that everything that Trump is doing is not going to work. Well, it is completely and utterly backfiring on them. We have states now that are bending the knee to the no tax on tips. There are other states that are pushing back on this. But if you really think about it, how are you going to defend this? Oh, wait, the rest of the country is getting no tax on tips, but the state that you're living in and those people that are governing those states, they want taxes. So let's see. The D's are for taxes. The fake news is for taxes. And Trump's removing the taxes. What do you think is going to happen to those states? You think the people are going to stay there? You think a lot of people are going to say, you know something? This is ridiculous. Or do you think they're going to vote these people out in the end? I do believe they're going to be voting them out. But think about what Trump and team are doing right now. They are now showing everyone what a true economy looks like. And piece by piece, the pieces are all coming together. And you can see Trump is using the Jacksonian Pivot to actually show people, look, the economy can grow. The economy can be absolutely incredible. And I do believe he's putting all this together to eventually remove the central bank system. And that's exactly what Jackson did. He removed the central bank system. He went to tariffs. He started to do everything that Trump is doing because Trump is using what Jackson has done. So you can see that they're going down the same path right now. And what's very interesting, all the tariffs that Trump is putting into place, people thought, oh, wait, look, we're not going to get any products from Asia. They're going to stop exporting those products into the U.S. But it looks like that is not happening whatsoever. And you have to remember, the manufacturers, the countries, they're going to be eating the costs of the tariffs. So that entire idea that it's going to be passed down to the people and you're going to see all of a sudden on the receipts, oh, look, there's another $30 or another $10. That is just absolutely ridiculous. The Kobisi letter on X put this out and said the following. U.S. imports from Southeast Asia are surging despite tariffs. U.S. imports from Southeast Asia rose 25% year on year in the third quarter of 2025 to a record approximately $40 billion on a third-month rolling average basis. Vietnam led the surge, with imports rising to approximately $18 billion, an all-time high. This is despite U.S. tariffs, which were initially set at 49%, but later negotiated down to 20%. Because what did Trump do? He negotiated with these countries, made deals with them. At the same time, Chinese exports to the U.S. plunged minus 40% year on year in the third quarter of 2025. This comes as the region has a massive cost advantage over U.S. and European manufacturing, which ranges from 20 to 100% even after tariffs. Company use Southeast Asian economies as alternative export bases to avoid China's 37% reciprocal tariffs. As a result, the amount of trade rerouted from China hit a record $283.7 billion in September. U.S. trade flows are shifting sharply amid tariffs. But again, you could see that here in this country, are we seeing the inflation? And remember, inflation is the devaluation of the currency. And we're seeing the inflation from the central bank. Remember, it's cumulative over time. But Trump now is countering the central bank inflation by dropping energy prices. And this is very, very important because, again, you just can't reverse the inflation that we have accumulated over time. You see, when you go back to 1971, when we came off the gold standard, that's when inflation started to pick up because, again, you came off the gold standard. You came off a system that actually maintained the value of the currency. And as we went from 1971 all the way up to the present day, we are now seeing about 3,000% inflation because, again, if you look at inflation and they tell you, look, it's only 2%, 1%, well, really, it's 1% of 1971 prices? No, it's 1% annually. That's it. But when you add it all up, it's about 3,000% inflation. Now, Trump, he can reverse this by paying back the debt. But again, how do you mitigate it right now before you pay back the debt? You bring the energy prices down and you put money back into the people's pockets, which means they have increased buying power. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. We're seeing in a lot of places fuel around $2.50, $2.20. In some places, it's below $2, like in Colorado or in Iowa. Out in Des Moines, Iowa, we can see gas is at $1.89. Think about that for a second. $1.89. And I do believe it's going to go much, much lower than that. So when you look at the price out in Iowa, yes, it contains ethanol. But eventually what's going to happen is you're going to see these prices drop quite a bit. Remember, we haven't even hit the point where Venezuela is going to be producing oil and shipping it to the U.S. We're not even at the point where Iran is going to fall and the people are going to take over Iran and we're going to see oil hit the market. We're not even at that point where the U.S. is drilling like crazy and producing oil. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Trump now is going to bring energy costs way, way down. And as we go through this year, the year of 2026, he's already setting it up. He's already preparing everything. And I do believe by the summertime, I wouldn't be surprised if we see fuel prices between $1.40 and $1.50. And I do believe by the end of the year, we might be getting close to $1, which would be absolutely amazing, just in time for all the manufacturers to come back to this country. You think Trump is timing this perfectly? So this happens, it's starting to seem that way. And think about it. At the same time, Trump now is cutting so many regulations. And remember, regulations were put into place to do what? To make it very, very difficult for small businesses to succeed. The regulations were put into place so companies would move out of this country. Regulations were put into place to make sure that anything that you tried to do, it made it very, very difficult. And Trump is now removing all of this. And again, there's a big cost to all the regulations, of course. But Trump now is removing all of this. And you could see that Trump is now giving the money back to the people. Peter Sayong, PhD, put this out and said, since Trump took office, he cut 646 regulations, totaling over $200 billion in annual savings, $1,500 per household. This year could be much bigger if Congress passes the REINS Act that guts the bureaucratic oligarchy. And I do believe that, yes, eventually this will happen. At this point in time, with the House and the Senate the way they are, is that going to happen? Maybe not right at this moment, but I do believe once Trump gets control of the House and the Senate, and the patriots are running the House and the Senate, and they actually are working for the people, they actually represent the people, I think you're going to see things really, really change. And yes, we need these things into place if we're going to take this to the next level. What is the next level? The next level is actually going after the central bank system, removing the Federal Reserve Act, going back to the Constitution, going back to sound money. And I do believe that's where all of this is headed right now. And this is why Trump is putting all the pieces together and actually making the economy look absolutely incredible. Because again, if the people are getting jobs, if inflation is not going up and fuel prices are going way, way down, if people see all of this happening all at the same time and they feel good, and if interest rates are coming down, and people are purchasing homes, and credit card bills aren't that expensive. Remember, he has to do this while playing in a central bank illusionary economy. Yes, he's building the parallel system at the same exact time, but right now we're in a transition period. We have a central bank system, which is a debt system. We have a tariff system, which is an income system. They're both operating at the same time. Actually, if you go back a little bit in time, go back to 1913, yes, we had both operating at the same time. And slowly but surely, what did the central bank do? They weaned us off the tariff system. And then we went fully on the central bank system. Trump is just doing the opposite right now. And yes, we're going through a transition period. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to see Trump wean us off the central bank system. It might not be directly to we, the people, right in the beginning, but you will see that I do believe once we get the House and the Senate will say, okay, let's start using and let's start allocating that money in the tariff system. So that money will be able to be used for what? To pay down the debt, to pay the income tax. Now, once that happens, what can Trump do at this point? He can start weaning us off the Federal Reserve. We don't have to borrow from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is getting their money from external sources, which alleviates the people paying this via income taxes. So this is one way Trump can do all this. And I do believe this is exactly, most likely, is what he's going to do. And you can see that it all depends on the Supreme Court, because you have to remember, they're going to be making a ruling on where all this goes. Now, I do believe there is precedent. There are those presidents that have used tariffs, McKinley, Andrew Jackson, and many more, and they made the country very, very wealthy. So I do believe, and even in the Federalist Papers and everywhere else, I do believe that Trump has a case against this, and I do believe the Supreme Court is going to be looking at this, going back in time, just like with the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and everything else, and they're going to say, yes, there is history where presidents, the tariff men, used tariffs to enrich this country. So I do believe they will be ruling in Trump's favor. Now, once again, we can see that Trump is waiting for this ruling, and we need the House and Senate to reverse what they put into place back in 1913, which is the Federal Reserve Act. And actually, I do believe we have to undo certain amendments where they tax the people. Because you have to remember, before this period of time, the people were not taxed. The money came externally. The people got to keep their hard-earned money. And I do believe this is exactly what Trump is doing right now. Trump, he put this out in Truth. He said, the USA market just hit another all-time high. All of them. Thank you, Mr. Tariff. That's very interesting. Mr. Tariff, he's part of the tariff men. Pray that the United States Supreme Court allows our country to continue its unprecedented march toward unparalleled greatness. Both our national and financial security have never been stronger. And he's absolutely right. And it's getting stronger and stronger every single day. This is why the central bankers are so panicked. This is why they don't want people to see this. Because once Trump and we, the people, get control of the House and the Senate, and we start allocating that money from the tariff system and start using it to fund the tariffs, start using it to pay the income taxes, start using it for all different certain things, and the people are starting to be weaned off of the central bank, and we're not borrowing from the central bank, it means that we're not adding any currency, fresh currency, brand new currency that was just printed into the system, which dilutes the currency, which causes inflation. So you're going to see inflation probably hit zero. And eventually, as we start to pay down the debt, you're going to start to see inflation go the other way, which means the people are going to get their buying power back, and people are going to feel the strength of their buying power. And those people that purchase their homes now, maybe using a 50-year mortgage with very, very low interest rates, their income is going to skyrocket compared to their fixed payment on their mortgages. So people are going to see something very, very different. Plus, during this period of time, I do believe you're going to see Bitcoin. I think you're going to see silver. You're going to see gold. They're going to skyrocket during this period of time, because what are people going to notice? The people are going to notice that the fiat currency is really worth absolutely nothing with all this debt. And I do believe once gold and silver hit a certain point, that's when Trump will say, you know what, now it's time to actually revisit gold and silver. Maybe we should audit to see how much we have. And that is going to give him additional leverage. And this is being done step by step. It's almost like the Jacksonian Pivot. James Thorne put this out and said, The Trump doctrine represents a full-scale revival of the Jacksonian tradition in American statecraft, making Donald J. Trump as important to the 21st century as Andrew Jackson was to the 19th. By embracing modern supply-side economics, delivering major tax cuts, deregulation, and decisive shift of policy, emphasis towards productive capital and economic sovereignty rather than financial engineering, Trump has reoriented the engines of growth toward productive capital, investment, industry, and national capacity. Anchored by the Trump corollary, asserting a sovereign American-led Western Hemisphere, and demonstrated in both the flawless military operation in Venezuela and the broader regime pressure strategy, this doctrine is not theater, but an integrated fusion of economic security and hemispheric power. These changes are as profound in their structural implication as the original Jacksonian Pivot, and those who assume Trump is a merely performative politician and strategist are therefore sorely mistaken, confusing a disruptive style with a coherent, focused project to realign America's coalition, its economic model, and its role in the world. And that's absolutely true. And you could see that Trump is going to continue with all this, and he's realigning America right now. You have to remember, the deep state, the central bankers, they've created the globalist system to benefit themselves. They put certain things in place. These sanctions on countries are to do what? Are to protect their system that they've created, like in Venezuela, like in Ukraine, in many other areas. And they do this to make sure that oil is not brought onto the market. Can you imagine if all of a sudden the oil in the U.S. was brought into the market, the oil from Venezuela, Iran, we'd have a lot of oil, which means the oil prices would drop dramatically, which means the deep state globalist system would kind of implode on itself. And they don't want that to happen. So once again, plus they wanted to bring us into the Green New Scam. So if you bring oil prices down to, $1, 80 cents, 60 cents, 50 cents, well, does that help their Green New agenda? No, it doesn't. Actually, it works in the opposite way. So they didn't want anything like this to happen. That's why when Biden came into office / Obama, this is why they made fuel prices go way, way up, because their agenda was to bring us into the Great Reset, the Green New Scam. Trump now is reversing all of this, and now you're going to see the central bank system have a major, major problem, because remember, they're propped up with the petrodollar system, and as fuel prices continually drop, what happens? They're in trouble. And as we wean ourselves off the central bank system and move to this tariff system where we're bringing in currency from all different places around the world because people are shipping their products into this country. And actually, when you really think about it, Trump is using everything that they did against them because they moved manufacturers out of this country. They moved them to China, Vietnam, South Korea, and many other places. And all the manufacturing basically was taking place outside of this country. And now by placing the tariffs on these countries, Trump is making a fortune, which actually is what he's really doing is bringing all that money back to the U.S., all the money that was stolen from this country. He's bringing it back to the U.S. and using the globalist system against them. And you could see as we move forward, you're going to see everything begin to change. And you're going to start to see Trump wean us off of the central bank system and move us slowly but surely onto the tariff system. And I do believe this is really going to accelerate after the midterms. And yes, we do have months to get there, but I do believe it will be done. And again, Trump is going to show the people of this country and the people of the world how great his system is. And as the economic system gets stronger and stronger and stronger, the people are going to see it. The people are going to say, yeah, this is incredible. We want more of this. And yes, the blue states, the deep state players, the D's, they're going to have a very, very difficult time. The central bank is going to have a very difficult time because people are going to see an income system compared to a debt system. I wonder which the people are going to pick. Because when they see an external system where you're getting the currency externally and you're no longer taking it internally, I think we know the answer to that question. The people are going to look at the central bank and go, why were we ever with the central bank? Everything is about to change. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.